I- Sorry, Ellen. Okay. So the meeting will be recorded. And again, thank you, Kshama, for coming to the meeting. Tarek, I know, and Ellen heard you speak, and we're very excited about your presentation, about what you have accomplished so far. And Tarek, I promise that he will introduce you and the two of you will start the dialogue. So again, welcome to the meeting tonight. And Tarek, do you want to start?
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And especially thank you, Shama, for being here. Um, I've been following Kshama Sawant, this is the way you say the last name, Sawant, uh, for quite a while and been very impressed with her revolutionary spirit. She was elected to the Seattle City Council in 2013 as the first socialist in nearly a century. So she won 4 elections during a decade in office. She overcame bitter opposition from big business and the Democratic Party. Her office won the first major city $15 an hour minimum wage in 2014, a wage that will soon be over $20 an hour. She used her office as a platform to build mass movements of working and young people. While in office, she only accepted an average worker's wage and after taxes donated the rest of her six-figure city council salary to a solidarity fund for worker organizing. Shama has since founded Workers Strike Back, which I would urge everyone to check out. Just go on Workers Strike Back online. You can do that, and that was founded to carry forward nationally the fighting strategy to fight the rich and win victories such as a $25 an hour minimum wage and Medicare for all. She's running for U.S. Congress now, and this is what she stands for is much the same as what many of us in Veterans for Peace stand for. All the issues she's right on, and she has a backbone that I say is made of steel. Of course, Veterans for Peace is a 501c3, cannot officially endorse or support her campaign, but individual members acting on their own accord certainly can. We need women like her with indomitable courage and fierce integrity in Congress. In a time when the specter of fascism stalks the land, we need revolutionary leaders who will not compromise what they stand for. Kshama Sawant is such a leader. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kshama. I just want to say that after uh, Kshama speaks for a bit, we can ask questions. And I'm hoping that people will confine themselves to questions, not long statements. Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Kshama, for being here.
Thank you
The
so much,
floor is
Tarek.
yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all very much. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you all. In the 2 years since the genocide began, over 500,000 Palestinian people have lost their lives in Gaza, according to scientific estimates from the British medical journal, The Lancet. The ceasefire announcement and any pause in the killing is a desperately needed relief for the Palestinian people. Every life that can be saved must be saved, and every injury or loss of limb that can be prevented must be prevented. Credit for this goes not to Trump or the Republicans or the Democrats or any of these politicians of imperialist America or Western imperialism. Credit goes to the Palestinian people themselves, who have refused to back down even in the face of such unimaginable savagery. Credit also goes to the international anti-war movement, the global working class that has risen up against this slaughter, including the Italian working class who carried out a general strike. But we also know that every time there was a ceasefire deal in the past years, Israel took Gaza back into what Muhammad Shahada, a writer, a Gaza-based writer, has described as the slow, latent, invisible violence of starvation and engaging people in a permanent state of non-life. And not to mention the fact that despite the ceasefire announcement, the flow of US-sponsored weapons to Israel is continuing uninterrupted. And the United States is responsible for 70% of Israel's weapons. Now is not the time to slow down or pause the anti-war movement. Now is the time to escalate. And we also have to ask ourselves some sobering questions if we want to build movements that can succeed. 60% of Americans oppose Israel's genocide in Gaza. We all know that this is absolutely earth-shattering. This is the first time that since Israel was installed as a state, this is the first time, this is the first generation in the United States that has, for a majority of which is against Israel's policies in Gaza. And yet the supply of arms to Israel has continued, and it is still continuing uninterrupted. We also see that 60% of Americans support universal health care. The vast majority of Americans want rent control. Poll after poll shows that the majority of Americans support taxing the rich. 67% support a billionaire tax. Yet, why do America's working people have none of these things? Another sobering question, actually, and it's very relevant to the things that Tariq was saying, that Trump is less popular than ever. In fact, Trump ended his first term as the most unpopular president in modern US history, yet he's back for Trump 2.0. His attacks on immigrants is quite astounding to look at the polls on this, because attacks on immigrants and the divide and conquer of the working class through using xenophobic rhetoric was actually the flagship issue that Trump used to win the election last year. And yet now the majority of Americans oppose his attack on immigrants, especially the use of masked ICE agents that are terrorizing communities across America. And yet, despite all of this, the Democratic Party has the lowest approval rating in 35 years. The Republican Party also is deeply unpopular. It has only 38% approval, but the Democratic Party manages to have an even lower approval rating of 30%. Chuck Schumer, the most powerful Democrat in the nation, has an approval rating almost percentage points below Trump's. What is happening here? The full story here, that most Americans are angry at both the Democratic and Republican parties, which brings me to the next sobering question, which is, if you look at the polls, over 60% of Americans want a new party. And on top of that, they don't just want any party. They reject another billionaire-backed party. This is from a CNN poll. In other words, the conclusion of that is that Americans want a new working-class party, and yet we don't have one. Why is that? Despite Democratic and Republican parties both being deeply hated, over 90% of the politicians sit in Congress for many decades. They win re-election after re-election. How do these politicians keep getting elected over and over, even though most people really hate them? The answer to all these questions lies in the fact that for decades, there has been no working class left alternative to the two parties of the billionaires. And in the absence of any independent working class party or even independent working class candidates who use their campaign, and if they get elected, their elected offices to fight, these two parties keep carrying out their genocidal, anti-worker, bipartisan agenda. Democratic and Republican politicians in the US Congress have continuously bankrolled Israel to carry out the genocide. In the last 2 years, the first 15 months of the genocide were presided over by President Biden and the Democratic Party, and then it was later under Trump. As Tarak mentioned, I'm running for the US Congress. I'm running as an independent socialist. My campaign is demanding a permanent ceasefire and permanent end to the genocide. We also are demanding a permanent end to all US military aid to Israel and to the occupation of Palestinian lands. My opponent, Democratic Congress member Adam Smith, he's one of the politicians who has voted to send tens of billions of dollars to Israel for the genocide. Smith also repeatedly voted to block United Nations food aid to Gaza, despite reports of catastrophic mass starvation. He called anti-war protesters left-wing fascists and demanded their arrest. Adam Smith has the blood of 500,000 Palestinians on his hands. He needs to be on trial for war crimes. The bare minimum price he needs to pay, and politicians like him need to pay, is to be thrown out of office. Adam Smith has been in office for 28 years. Throughout that time, he has consistently voted for billions of dollars for Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. No wonder that Smith is a darling of AIPAC and the Zionist lobby, and that AIPAC was his biggest funder in the election last year. Smith has voted for the US invasion and occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan. He supported the wars in Kosovo, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and the current bloody inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. He has the blood of literally millions of people on his hands, as do many of his fellow Democrats and Republicans. No wonder that for nearly 3 decades, Smith has been bankrolled by weapons industry profiteers such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, and so on. In 2001, Smith voted for Republican President George W. Bush's Patriot Act, which unleashed a new wave of mass surveillance, as we know, and attacks on peaceful protest movements. And Smith helped to create the deportation machine that Trump is now using. Smith was one of the many Democrats who voted to create ICE in 2002 as part of Bush's Homeland Security Act. And then after that, Smith voted again and again to fund ICE through repeated budgets. Smith has already received the maximum donation for his campaign next year from, the election is next year, from Alexander Karp, the CEO of Palantir. The Asian Times described Alexander Karp as the guy who is building the operating system for perpetual war. In 2008, Smith voted in favor of Bush's shameful bailout of big banks, while tens of millions of ordinary people were left to rot in the wake of the Great Recession. The bank bailouts continued, as we know, under Democratic President Barack Obama. In 1997, Adam Smith voted for a savage $150 billion slashing of Medicare and Medicaid funding that happened under Bill Clinton's so-called Balanced Budget Act. Adam Smith and Democrats like him claim that they are fighting against Donald Trump, but as you can clearly see, that is exactly what he and other Democrats have not done. Adam Smith and other Democrats have been among those most responsible for the rightward lurch by the Democratic Party, paving the way for Trump to come to power. The Clinton administration paved the way for the George W. Bush administration, the Barack Obama administration, and the Hillary Clinton campaign, the disastrous campaign in 2016. They paved the way for Trump 1.0, and then Biden's administration and the Democratic Party's, majority trifecta, majority House, majority Senate, President Biden, they paved the way for Trump again. Just one statistic to share in this context is nearly 20 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 refused to vote at all last year. They didn't vote for Trump, they refused to vote at all. And their top 2 reasons were the genocide and anger at the cost of living crisis in the United States. So all of this shows that putting our faith in the Democratic Party is exactly the wrong strategy if we want to defeat Trump, the right wing, and the billionaire class. Yet progressive Democrats like AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing their best to keep the Democratic Party on life support. Both AOC and Sanders have been using their Fight Oligarchy tour to cynically tap into the frustrations of millions and channel them back into the Democratic Party for the 2026 midterm elections. Giving cover to the Democratic Party is a betrayal of working people. So why has AOC abandoned working people and refused to fight for any of the demands she campaigned on? Because doing so would put her in direct conflict with the Democratic Party leadership and with the billionaire class, with lots of powerful people. And it would cause, in her own words, relational harm for her on a day-to-day basis, with all these powerful people. And in other words, it would be bad for her career. Also, unfortunately, if we are trying to understand how Trump found this opening to be reelected again, most of the labor leadership has unfortunately completely failed to fight against the rise of the right wing. They have failed to fight the billionaire class, and at root of this is for decades in the militant layer in the labor movement, the militant layer that actually won the New Deal, that won a lot of the victories in the decades ago. Most of that militant layer has been hollowed out, and most of the labor leadership for the last 3-4 decades has followed the ideas of what I would call business unionism, meaning trying to make peace between the bosses and the workers, not understanding that these are actually 2 classes with opposing interests under capitalism. And an aspect of business unionism is also being tied at the hip to the boss's parties, and the Democratic Party is the boss's party, is the party of the both Democrats and Republicans are parties of capitalism. And so it means that the labor leadership has absolutely refused to call for the strike actions that are needed and has acted as an obstacle to any type of fight back. This is completely criminal. It's a criminal lack of accountability and responsibility on the part of the labor leadership. I mean, look at the contrast. The Italian general strike, starting with the dock workers who refused to load weapons on ships bound for Israel, and then obviously that followed by the general strike, that created crucial momentum for the global anti-war movement. Contrast that to in the United States, like I said before, and as everybody knows, the United States supplies 70% of Israel's arms. So labor action here in the United States is going to be completely and utterly decisive for anything that can be done on behalf of the Palestinian people. And the labor leadership in the United States has been completely missing in action. They have also failed, I mean, as far as the genocide is concerned, but they have also completely failed to take action against Trump's brutal attacks, the $1 trillion of cuts to Medicare and Medicaid, absolutely no action from the labor leadership, and also the brutal attacks on federal public sector workers. We already know the 300,000 workers plus 300,000 plus public sector workers from the federal government who are have lost and are going to lose their jobs this year. Within that, you all know what's happened with the Department of Veteran Affairs, where they've fired close to 86,000 workers, I think. And this is on top of the VA being severely understaffed for years. And so what has the American Federation of Government Employees, AFG, the union for the federal workers, done? It has failed to call strike action. And I think we have to, if we are serious about understanding how can we actually change the situation and really fight back effectively and defeat Trump, and not just Trump, but the rise of Trumpism, the dangerous right-wing reactionary ideas, and the overall attacks on the working class, on oppressed communities, on immigrant communities by both the Democrats and Republicans and by the billionaire class, then we have to answer these questions and understand that these are obstacles to building the kind of fight back that's needed. And I don't think the obstacle at this moment is the willingness of the mass of working class to fight back. That's very clear. Working class people are itching to fight back, but what's missing is the leadership. One of the most crucial lessons from the 10 years of my socialist city council office in Seattle is that working people's representatives, whether you're elected in city council or Congress, whether you're a leader in the labor movement or a leader of a social movement, it doesn't matter which arena, that working people's representatives must go on the offensive and use our positions to build movements of working people around concrete demands. That is why I'm also using my election campaign to build a militant movement for free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich, for national rent control, and for a $25 an hour federal minimum wage. Tarek mentioned that, and this wage should be at least $30 an hour in major cities like New York and so on. It was through a militant fighting strategy that we won the nation's highest minimum wage in Seattle, which obviously started as $15 an hour, but it's now going to go up to $21.30 an hour in January of 2026. It was the first big city minimum wage victory, and it spread across the nation after we won it here. Literally, tens of millions of workers nationally in America have got a historic wage increase because of the movement we led here. Compare that to how AOC and Bernie Sanders, with their international superstar profile, they completely abandoned the fight for 15 for fear of embarrassing Biden, for refusing to take any battle with the Democratic leadership, and the federal minimum wage is still at a disgraceful $7.25 an hour. We in Seattle, through my office, won in unprecedented renters' rights laws, like the $10 cap on late rent fees, a ban on evictions during winter months, a 6-month notice for all rent increases, and a law that requires that your landlord give you 3 months worth of rent money if they force you to have to move because of a rent increase of 10% or more. And we also won what we call the Amazon tax, which is a tax on the wealthiest corporations, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars every year for affordable housing by taxing Amazon, and other businesses. And so what we've shown is that when working people fight, we can win. But what is a fighting strategy is, I think the lessons should be learned. A fighting strategy means that you as a leader need to become a threat to the political establishment if you want to win anything for working class people. And you can only be a threat if you use your elected office or your public position of any kind to mobilize hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of working people. You cannot win by trying to make peace with the bosses or their political representatives. That is a mythology that you can do that. You can't do that. And most importantly, in all this, a fighting strategy means understanding who is on the side of the working class and who is not. A fighting strategy, for example, in the United States means understanding that the Democratic Party is not a friend of the working class, but actually our class enemy. If you try to get cozy with the Democrats, you will end up selling out working people regardless of your intentions. This means that you as a leader have to put the interests of working people first, not your career or your day-to-day comfort. Winning for the working class, and this is the thing that most people don't see because it's invisible, sort of behind the scenes, but I know from my personal experience, winning for the working class requires you to go into battle against all the political representatives of the bosses, whether it's Democrats, Republican politicians, or labor leaders, or NGO leaders who are, obstacles to winning victories, which means that you have to understand that your day-to-day life as a leader is not going to be a cozy workplace where you go and make friends with your quote unquote colleagues in the Democratic Party. That's not how it works. You go there to battle. You go there to fight for the working class. It's a battleground. That cannot be helped. That is the way it is. And this is what AOC meant when she said, I don't want to take on relational harm, because it's not just about her. Most of these politicians, there's virtually nobody who has done what we have done, precisely because they don't want to take on this type of battle. And this is imperative for winning victories for the working class. In any arena, mass movements are crucial, and in any arena, the correct kind of leadership for mass movements is crucial. Without one of these two things, we are not going to be able to win victories. Similar in Seattle, we won because we had a unique leadership through my office and through my fellow revolutionary socialists. But the reason we were able to win was because we were able to harness that leadership into mobilizing tens of thousands of people, an army of working class people to fight back. Just a few things before I stop. Some people ask, what can we do with one congressional office? I mean, there are 100 senators and 435 House members. One elected office cannot achieve anything. But here's what I would say is that what we were able to achieve in Seattle is not simply a game of how many votes I had on day one. If that was the case, then we would not have won a single victory with just one elected position, as I was surrounded by working class enemies in City Hall. It was exactly what I just said, our ability to use our office to build powerful movements. That was what won unprecedented victories. But what you don't have in Congress or anywhere, really anywhere, you have hundreds of Democratic Socialists of America, elected officials. None of them has done what we did in Seattle, which is use our office to become a threat to the ruling class and build movements that nobody has done, built that kind of army that's needed. And in fact, the Seattle Times, which is not a fan of our work, they very much represent the Chamber of Commerce. They were forced to acknowledge that with just one elected position, we completely commandeered the city's political agenda to win victories. And as Mother Jones magazine said, we dragged the Democratic Party politicians by the nose to win victories. We forced them to vote yes on our bills. We forced them to concede to our victories. We forced big business to concede to our victories because of the strength of the movement. And I've pledged that if I am elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C., and immediately launch a nationwide fighting campaign to end all military aid to Israel and to win free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich. I'll just say in closing that these methods are not new. I have not invented them. These are the methods of revolutionary socialism. As I mentioned earlier, these are the methods that actually were used by the labor leaders of the Teamsters general strike in Minneapolis in 1934, which was one of the three general strikes that forced Democratic President FDR to concede and pass the New Deal program. That was entirely a victory of a militant labor movement. And it was through that type of militant movement building and the threat of revolution and new parties of working class people that public health care and social safety nets were won in Canada and Western Europe. And these are also the methods that won the Russian Revolution in 1917, the only successful, workers' revolution and most progressive event in modern modern human history. The crisis of the working class and the planet will not be ended without ending capitalism. Palestinian oppression will not be ended without ending capitalism. We just watched a really powerful short film about climate change. 7 out of 10 people around the world want their countries to make the switch to clean energy as quickly as possible to tackle the climate crisis. And yet, what is happening today? The Guardian newspaper, for example, just published a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that the capitalist governments around the world are actually not reducing fossil fuel usage. They are ramping up coal, gas, and oil extraction, which is going to put climate goals completely beyond reach. So all of this, what we're saying is that they're actually going to increase fossil fuel production compared to 2023, because that was the last time the data was compiled. And so all of this shows that we need to get rid of the capitalist system once and for all if there is going to be any future for humanity, or for that matter, the thousands of the other species which are being actively extinguished by the system, as the film showed. For all these reasons, I am a revolutionary socialist. That is for also why I launched Workers Strike Back. And that is also why this campaign for Congress is crucial, because it is one campaign, but it is of national importance. It's of crucial importance because by winning this one position, we can make massive historic breakthroughs for all of these causes. And the reason is because it is based on this strategy that I explained. There's never been a revolutionary socialist elected to the US Congress, and I think it's time we turn politics completely upside down in Washington, D.C., in the same way that we did for a decade in Seattle, Washington. And so I hope you all will join our campaign, join Workers Strike Back. And again, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Kshama. You've given us a lot of really good information. I have to say, I'm just delighted to hear it. And I know that you're going to stand for what you say, because that's what you have done ever since you got involved in politics. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. People have questions or brief comments. I'm going to call on people. Okay, I'm going to call on, first I'm going to call on Alice Slater because she applauded quite a bit. And then we're going to go to Jack and Nick Moturn. Okay, Alice? Alice, you're muted, sweetie. Okay,
I just want to thank you for this incredible presentation. It reminds me that FDR, when he wanted to do things and he was being stopped, he'd go to the people and say, make me do it. That was his way of getting those social programs through. And I'll do whatever I can to support you. And I really feel like here in New York, we have some kind of an opportunity with Mamdani. He has 30,000 kids going door to door, millions of phone calls, and he doesn't believe in billionaires. He said that he's not totally socialist yet, but it's a promising.
He is a socialist.
Well, I mean, what Khan is saying is to destroy capitalism. He's not ready to destroy capitalism, which is what's required. But I think New York will be a good step on the way right now with what's happening.
So do you have a question for Kshama?
What did you think? What do you think of him and what's going on? What's your opinion, Kwana?
You're
That's my
muted,
question.
Kshama.
Should I go ahead and respond to that? Yeah, I think, first of all, Alice, I totally agree with you that we do need to destroy or overthrow capitalism, and we need global socialism, because without that there is absolutely no future. There's no hope. And the simple reason is that and I'm actually glad that we started this meeting with that film on climate crisis, because it's a really good example that even though the vast majority of the 7 billion people on this planet want an end to the climate crisis because they see that it is an absolutely existential threat. I mean, we are on the edge of the precipice. We're about to go off the cliff. It's not overly dramatic or exaggeration at this moment. That is how that is how crucial, I mean, that is how do or die this moment is in terms of climate crisis. And yet you're seeing that capitalism is actually ramping up all of the fossil fuel extraction. And the reason is that for the capitalist class, for the bosses, it's about the profits. And it's not that they lack IQ to understand that there is climate crisis, but the system is set up in such a way that they will continue to plunder the planet and exploit billions of people, because that is their single-minded motive, to continue to extract wealth from the planet, from the billions of workers who go to work every day and get a pittance in return for all the wealth that they create. And so as long as these people, this sociopathic system and the billionaires who own all of the wealth, as long as they own all of the wealth, we will not be able to control it. So socialism, in my view, is taking into democratic public ownership of workers the commanding heights of the economy. So, think of all the top 500 corporations, all of these, because if we can't control what we don't own, we have to own it democratically in order to make the switch, for example, to clean, renewable energy. And that democratic ownership of the means of production, so to say, as Karl Marx said, by the working class, that is socialism. And so in that sense, we are revolutionary socialists because that's what we want. And we call it revolutionary socialism because overthrowing capitalism is not going to happen through discussion with the billionaires. It is going to need political revolutions in order to end the power of the billionaire class. And all of this is also related to Mamdani as well. I mean, I strongly support the demands that Mamdani is running on, the free transit, the publicly organized grocery stores. He's not talking about the $30 an hour minimum wage really at all, but that is a very strongly popular demand. I mean, I was in New York recently. That's where I met Tarak, and it is extremely popular. Any working class person you talk to, they're strongly excited about it. There's real momentum to win. And I also agree with Alice that Mamdani's campaign has really accomplished a really incredible feat where they have mobilized now tens of thousands of volunteers. That's how we have won every campaign. I mean, as Tarak said, we've had bitter opposition from the Democratic Party, from big business. We only won the campaigns we did, which was all the campaigns. We've never been defeated on the city council on the basis of volunteers. I would just say that in order to win these demands, though, Mamdani or anybody else who's leading these movements will need to build that momentum on the ground. I don't agree with him focusing on setting up meetings with the billionaires. He has set up 2 meetings. He asked for those meetings. I would never do that. I would not ask for meetings because here's the simple reason is that they are never going to be happy unless you are an out and out sellout against the working class. And so what he's trying to do, in my view, is trying to sort of make peace, sort of bring billionaires, try to win them over morally. You can't do that. You have to go to war against them because they are at war against you. It is class war. Capitalism is class war. They are at class war against the tens of millions of working class people in the United States who go to work every day, 2, 3 jobs, and yet are barely able to keep a roof over their heads or put food on the table for their families. That is whom we have to be loyal to. And so in order to actually win those demands, I think he will need to take the fighting strategy that we have taken. I hope he does. So far, I think that he has, since the primary, he's sort of moving towards trying to sort of, send friendly signals to the billionaires. I don't think that's the way to go.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to go to Jack Gilroy, then I'm going to go to Nick, then I'm going to go to Tanya. So Jack, you're up.
Okay, Kshama, Just a wonderful presentation. I think if you continue your passion and your truth telling, you're going to win that congressional seat. Now, the question, you must be in the crosshairs of AIPAC. What are you going to do about that?
Yes, Jack, you're completely right. We are very much in the crosshairs of AIPAC. In fact, AIPAC was the biggest funder actually of Adam Smith last year, believe it or not, in his campaign. You know, they gave him the biggest chunk of money through the PAC money and so on. And so our approach to this is exactly is what and this is a contrast between us and Mamdani also to some degree, in the sense that we believe that the only way to win against this type of big money, Zionist lobby, big business, billionaires, and so on, is for us to stay the course and be very, very clear which side we are on. We are not on the side of genocide. We are not on the side of occupation. We are not on the side of apartheid. We are not on the side of Zionism. We will never make peace with that, because making peace with that will be a complete betrayal of the Palestinian people. It will be a complete betrayal of any idea of fighting against oppression. It's not only about the Palestinian people. It's about what is the way forward. If I start selling out on that, it is actually muddying the ground and sort of confusing people on what is actually needs to be done. And so the only way we can fight AIPAC and defeat them is, one, to never muddy the waters, to be very, very clear, because that is what empowers people. In fact, to be honest with you all, a lot of our political enemies also actually come and say that I did not actually want to vote for you, but I voted for you because, God damn it, I want a politician who never bullshits, who never lies, and who always stays the course, and who never sells out. And even if I don't agree with some of the positions you have, we rarely see a politician who is willing to actually do what they believe in and not cater to every interest group that comes in front of them. The second way to defeat AIPAC is to really build a powerful ground campaign and also a national campaign. We have to do both. We have to build a powerful campaign on the ground in the 9th Congressional District of Washington State, because ultimately we're not going to get to the primary, much less win the election, if we don't actually win the votes. So we are already doing that, but we have to do that much more. And that is our focus, to mobilize, just like Mamdani has done, tens of thousands of volunteers to go door knocking, tabling, phone banking, really spread the word. We just had a rally on Sunday that we also had watch parties for nationally, including in New York City. So we're trying to build a dynamic both nationally and on the ground. And it's on that type of working class fight back that we're going to be able to defeat AIPAC.
Thank you. That's great. Music to my ears. Let's see. Nick, where did you go? There you are.
Yeah.
This is Nick Moturn.
I want to thank you for a really clear presentation about what has to be dealt with in terms of class and money. One thing I wanted to ask is that very often the Democrats have made arrangements so that they will support global colonialism in return for social programs in this country. And I wonder if what you're talking about with respect to Gaza is really also a withdrawal of the military base for corporations globally. And when you do that, then you become open to fear-mongering about other people attacking the United States. And in relation to that, you have Adam Smith there, who is very well supported by military contractors and has been a very big advocate for, global colonialism in the bargain. So I just wanted to ask you how you intend to deal with the question of our, global military stance, and also how you're going to deal with the fundraising question, because I think that my acquaintance with, running for Congress is there's always people wanting to support you, and then there's always a deal waiting down at the end after you get elected. And so I just wanted to ask those two things. Thank you.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said, Nick? What about the deal waiting?
Well, in other words, it's very interesting. Once I ran for Congress in a very kind of fledgling campaign, and I was approached by people from Palestine actually as early supporters, and then there were other people who came along and wanted to, and I realized very early on that I was going to have to deliver certain things in exchange for money, and even though I was a supporter of Palestine, I really wasn't pleased with that kind of an equation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Yeah, I can definitely respond. So in terms of the Democratic Party, I think it is at this point, I would say I think it's very clear that the Democratic Party is not doing some sort of quid pro quo where they support global colonialism in return for social programs. I mean, obviously that's not something we would agree with at all. I mean, by definition, revolutionary socialism demands internationalism. We are on the side of the international working class. We would never, it would be a grave and fatal mistake to counterpose the interests of American working class people against other working class people, because our interests are tied together. Our interests are not tied together with the ruling class people of our ethnicity. Our interests are tied with, on a class basis. And so we would never separate out the American working class from the international working class. But I think that you can safely say at this moment, actually, both the Democratic and the Republican Party have been hostile to both things, meaning they are absolute out and out colonialists and imperialists. And also both of the parties have been purveyors of massive savage cuts to social programs and a refusal to fund a lot of the needs of working class people, including, I mentioned, the billionaire tax, which is extremely popular. Taxing the rich I cannot tell you how popular that is. That is like an insanely unifying issue. You go to West Virginia and you campaign on taxing the rich and free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, you will win over, I guarantee you, a big portion of the Trump base. The reason Trump has his base in the first place is because people are so angry at the Democratic Party, and they're really angry at the Republican Party too. Trump is just a con man who posed himself as a sort of outsider. Obviously, we know he's not, and in fact, people are very angry with him, and his poll numbers have, plummeted dramatically. And so I think that we should clarify that actually the goals of imperialism are integral to capitalism itself. So, in other words, these representatives of the capitalist class, of the billionaire class, which is Democratic and Republican parties, they are both purveyors of war and bloodshed and genocide. They are also the same entities that have ended up reducing, the quality of life and the standards of living of the tens of millions of uh, working class families, and really hundreds of millions of working class people in the United States. If you look at the living standards of working class people, they have dramatically deteriorated. Even tech workers, for example, tech work used to be the safe area. Like, you go to, I used to be a tech worker myself. You put your head down, go to college, get a tech degree, software engineering degree, and you're set for life. That is no longer the case for the younger generation, because that's how capitalism operates. So I would say that for the younger generations, people who are aged 18 to 34 and even older than that, people are increasingly clear that neither is capitalism working for them, nor are the parties that represent capitalism. And what we need desperately is an alternative. And that is why Worker Strike Back is calling for a new party for the working class. And in fact, even Trump's MAGA base actually is against war spending, because they can do the simple math, that you're sending hundreds of billions of dollars internationally for war. And obviously, a big chunk of that is for the genocide in Gaza. And yet we don't have healthcare, we don't have housing, we don't have simple transit infrastructure, we don't have funding for public schools. All of the aspects of life are in such crisis because there's never any money for us, but there's endless money for the profits of the billionaires, endless money for war. So I think it's very straightforward for us to make that connection, and we should continue to make that connection, because we need to win over a big chunk of Trump's MAGA base if we are to actually carry out a fight back against him, let alone defeating him. And then just lastly, in the way we fundraise is through, obviously we want anybody who can give us the maximum donation. Like, for example, for the primary election, this year, next year and next August, is the maximum that any individual can donate is $3,500. Obviously, if you're a married couple, you can donate $7,000. And we do have people who can afford it and who do it. Sometimes they can't afford it in one chunk, but they'll donate on a monthly basis. They'll make a monthly payment that adds up to that amount. But there are a lot of people who don't have that kind of cash, but they will donate every last penny that they can because they believe in this campaign. And that is the basis on which we have won all the 4 elections on the city council. They never, as I said, they never defeated us. The last election was not even an election that I was scheduled for. It was a recall attempt against us, and we defeated them on that. That recall was by the billionaire class, Jeff Bezos and those billionaires, but also Trump supporting corporate landlords. They were behind the recall, and they put our election in the December special election. The Supreme Court sided with them. They basically did everything that they could for voter suppression because, December in Seattle is cold and rainy and nobody knows that there's an election in December. And yet we defeated them. And you know what we did in the last 2 elections in 2019 and 2021? Both times we actually set new records for fundraising in Seattle. So in Seattle City Council history, to date, our fundraising numbers are the numbers that have made the record. And so we have done that. That doesn't mean we can get complacent. I really agree with you that fundraising is going to be absolutely crucial, but that is the basis on which we win, is through genuinely fighting to fight to win people over. Like just last week, somebody, a restaurant worker, she saw one of our campaign volunteers at a table and she gave her whole day's tips to us. She said, I need this to pay my rent, but I'm giving this to you because I believe in this campaign. Kshama needs to win. And as far as delivering certain things in exchange for money, that is not how we operate. That is why it is important that we never shift other than when we believe it is politically warranted. So our political positions are the unvarnished reality of what we genuinely believe in. I will never say something that is convenient in exchange for money. So if somebody wants to donate money, but on the basis that I lie to them that I need to do this, I will never do that. And I will never make a promise that I cannot keep.
Thank you again. We have a question from Tanya. Tanya, go ahead.
I really appreciated hearing you, Kshama. Your words were music to my ears. Takes me back about 50 years when we actually had somewhat of a movement in this country. My question concerns a comment that you made about people worrying more about their comfort than their principles. And I pretty much know, I think, what you'll say, but let me ask this anyhow. Many of the people that we work with in this region are white middle-class people. And I have run into this on any number of issues that I've worked with where people basically sell out their principles. They say they support a particular position, but they wind up supporting the police. They wind up supporting, whatever the controlling structure is, which is the corporate and capitalist structure. So I guess my question is, do you have any strategies or tactics for working with this particular class of people to try to bring them around, to try to get them to, find their own backbone and take some risks with their comfort?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Tanya. I would say that there's 2 kinds of people, roughly speaking, and you will obviously use your own instinct based on your knowledge about those people on which of these 2 categories they fall into. I have just learned through my own experience, through our organizing experience here with 10 years on the city council. And since then, since building Worker Strike Back and actually winning victories through Worker Strike Back as well. If I have time, I can mention those. But I would say one category of people, this type of, NGO leaders or other leaders, the middle class people that you're talking about, some of them are genuine, but have instincts that, they want to play it safe. We don't agree with them, but if they're genuinely intentioned, then it is important for us to, do our best to win them over. We should. I mean, we have to always give people a chance to change their positions, improve their positions. And in fact, if there's anything that Marxism believes in, Marxist, the science as a science believes in, it's that consciousness is not etched in stone. People will evolve. I mean, that has been the constant. The only constant is change, and change comes about through change in consciousness. And so we genuinely believe in the ability of people to learn through mistakes. We also learn through our own mistakes. And so I think we should try our best to do that. I would say, though, that in my experience, most of the people don't fall into that category. Some do, and we have actually had a very positive relationship with them, political relationship with them, and they're still fighting alongside us. And we sometimes disagree, sometimes agree, but we actually most of the time we do agree. That's why we do work together. But even when we disagree, we do that respectfully. But that category of people, quite honestly, and I know this might sound depressing, but that is a small category of people. For the most part, what I would say is that what our movements encounter are gatekeepers. And I think for my first suggestion would be is for us to look at this through a political lens and not a personalized lens, meaning that I always tell myself, my task is to do the best thing possible for the interests of the broader working class. My task is not to make this one individual in front of me happy. If they're wrong, then they're wrong, and I don't have an obligation to to change what is good for the working class in order to make them happy. In fact, I have an obligation to not do that, because if I did that, that means selling out working class people. So it's always best to elevate our own thinking towards a politicized thinking, meaning that this person, if they have this position that is actually contrary to the interests of the movement, then they have to be defeated. It's as simple as that. And you can't make it about friendship or personal relationship or anything like that. And that is one of the hardest things that people find to do. But ultimately, you have to understand that the fighting strategy means understanding that these people who are obstacles to progress, obstacle to the movement, these are gatekeepers. They're playing a gatekeeping role, and they are not on the side of the working class. I'll just give you a concrete example. During the Amazon tax fight in 2020, and remember, that was during the George Floyd rebellion, the BLM movement. It wasn't just the Amazon billionaires or the Democratic Party who opposed us. Obviously, they did. But who else opposed us? It was many of the labor leaders of the big unions. They opposed us. They tried to undermine the tax Amazon movement with behind the scenes maneuvers. Also, most of the leaders, Black people, leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, also opposed us. These people are really misleaders. They relentlessly attacked my office, claiming that Amazon tax was not a Black issue. Keep in mind, this was about affordable housing, and Black people are most disproportionately hurting for lack of affordable housing. So what they were doing was not attacking me. They were attacking me, but that was not the goal. The goal was to defeat the movement that was in the interests of Black working class and poor people. In other words, they were actually selling out Black working class people. Black leaders were selling out Black working class people. They went really all out. They smeared me and other leaders in the tax Amazon campaign as anti-Black. There was even a New York Times article that was written in their favor. I mean, absolutely horrendous. These misleaders, they made a deal with the Democratic Party. They got millions of dollars for their NGOs, and in return, they cut off all relations with the tax Amazon movement and with my office. So this is a type of cutthroat maneuvers that these gatekeepers carry out that can defeat the movement if we as leaders are not clear that these gatekeepers, they need to be defeated. So it was our clarity that was the role, the insidious role they were playing. That is what allowed us to win tax Amazon. And what we said was, we're not going to listen to gatekeepers. I don't care what race they are. That's not the issue. The issue is fighting for Black and other working class people. And so what we said is, we'll take our tax Amazon petition directly to the ordinary people at the BLM protests. And guess what happened? Our clipboards were practically flying out of our hands, because people would be like, fuck yeah, I want to tax Amazon. I want affordable housing in Seattle. And many of them were Black working class people, but people of all races supported us. And we collected 30,000 signatures for the tax Amazon ballot initiative in 3 months, 10,000 signatures a month. That's how strong the support was. And it was on the credible threat that we will go to the ballot if the city council doesn't vote yes on our tax Amazon bill. That is on that's the basis on which we forced them to vote yes.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying is that people, people who are really involved in the struggle to create, real change they really need to trust in themselves and to hold the line constantly.
We absolutely have to hold the line. And the way you force these gatekeepers to defeat is by mobilizing enough ordinary people alongside you that they are either forced to back out or then they're forced to say, oh, yeah, I support this too, which is what happens all the time.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very
We have
much.
two more questions. We have two more questions. We have Nydia and Paul Cox. And I just want to say, Kshama, you may not know these people who have asked these questions, but I do. And they're all wonderful, longtime organizers and activists of the first class. So Nydia, go ahead, and then we'll have Paul Cox and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Yes, thank you enormously for your courage, your intelligence, and your idealism. It's not, you're going to make it realism, not idealism. I just want to say something about taxing the rich and give you some context, and then I have a quick question. The context is that in the 1950s, the federal tax level for rich people was 90%. I know this personally. I worked for writers on Broadway and Hollywood who would get $100,000 for a script. That was a lot of money in those days. They were in the 90% bracket. And one particular writer whom you would probably know the credits, one was 7 Year Itch and Breakfast at Tiffany's. I don't know, they might have some meaning for you. It was unfair, in his opinion, that artists were in a bracket like that. They had not inherited wealth. They weren't the heads of companies. So please, yes, tax the rich. And there is a context in the past that sets it in contrast to today. But my question is this. I hope you'll be watching the Mandani race, and also, I think her name is Nolita Grijalva, the woman from Arizona who has won a congressional seat and is not being seated. And in fact, the shutdown may be to keep her from voting on the whole issue of releasing the files for Jeffrey Epstein. Please watch her campaign, and will you try to connect with her at some point, even before your primary? That's my question.
I mean, our door is always open for whether it's Mamdani or Grijalva, and we're not in any way stopping them from doing good things. If they do good things, we will support them. So, for example, I strongly support Mamdani's campaign. I've actually publicly pledged that if there's a movement to win $30 an hour in New York City, I will personally come and help with that campaign. And so what I would say is that we are certainly not stopping these political figures from doing the right thing. And if they do the right thing, we will support them. For us, it's about the issues and positions people take. It's not a personal in any way. It's not a personal position in any way. And so we'll be watching what happens with these races. What I would say is that so far, the strategy of trying to work within the Democratic Party and trying to make peace with them has not worked. And so it is my duty to look at the evidence and say that doesn't work. I cannot be somebody who's saying that, well, that might work. I mean, okay, if it works, then I'm happy to be proven wrong. And I have no problem admitting that I was wrong. I just don't see it working because it hasn't worked so far. I would say actually that, as a matter of fact, AOC, when she was running in 2018, and even after she won, actually she was actually even stronger than these people. And look at how much she is sold out. She, during her campaign, she literally said she was not having big meetings with billionaires like Mamdani is doing. She actually said that it would be better for me to be a one-term Congress member than to sell out, which I totally agree with. And then after getting elected, actually she immediately organized a sit-in of Nancy Pelosi's office alongside the Sunrise Movement on the climate change issue. Those are actions that we strongly supported. I strongly supported AOC. I also supported Bernie Sanders' both campaign. I spoke at his rallies both in 2016 and 2020 in the Seattle area. And I strongly supported everything that he said he was fighting for. What I don't agree with is the capitulation to the Democratic Party establishment. And now what they're doing is giving cover to a genocidal party. I mean, if genocide is not a line you're not willing to cross, then I don't know what is a line you're not willing to cross. And so for us, it's about those principled positions. It's not about the individuals. And for any individual doing the right thing by working class people, we will be on their side. And as far as the other thing, yeah, I mean, I really agree with what you were saying about the federal tax. And in fact, a big emphasis has to be on the wealth tax because that is what's inherited tax. And also, I just wanted to echo what Tarak said. I don't know you all personally, but I have no doubt in my mind that what we are doing today is standing on the shoulders of the fighters from the past movements. And so I absolutely, it's really it's an honor to be able to speak alongside you all.
Thank you. Thank you again. Okay. Our last but definitely not least speaker is Paul question will come from Paul Cox. And Paul Cox is a member of the National Board of Directors, Veterans for Peace National Board of Directors, and one of our best and longtime activists. Thank you, Paul. Go
Don't
ahead.
stop.
It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, Kshama, I really am very impressed. And I want to apologize. You're only talking to 20 people. You should be talking to a couple of hundred of our members, but here we are. And while we're at it, I know most of the people on this call have certain amount of resources. And so I put a link in the chat for you to go to her website and throw something at it. And really, I'm very impressed with what you have to say. And you mentioned the difference between income tax and wealth tax is really important. It's the agglomeration of wealth that is a major problem. So a football player might make a couple of million or 20 million a year for 4 or 5 years. That doesn't make him ruling class unless he invests that very wisely into military industrial complex and makes tons of money. And so we really have to really pay much more attention to who has the wealth and where they're hiding it, and take that to support healthcare, education, and justice for the poor people in this country. So thank you so much. I'm very impressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. And Paul has put, is that it, Paul? Okay, great. But thank you. So Paul has put Kshama's website in the chat, which is Kshama, it's spelled with a K, but you don't pronounce the K. Kshama Sawant.org. KshamaSawant.org. And that'll take you to our website. And if you want to get involved, I joined Workers Fight Back, Workers Strike. I joined that, and I'm very happy I did. And if you want to help out on her campaign, if you were so inspired, I'll encourage you to go there. So thank you so much, Kshama. Your answers and what you said has been so complete. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me over for this meeting. And yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime. And just in response to what Paul was observing, I strongly agree. In fact, one of the things we have done consistently is trying to explain that tech workers, or like you said, Paul, a football player, we have to actually unite the working class as a whole. So whether you're a barista at Starbucks or you're a football player or a tech worker who's making, significantly more money, still, if you're a working class person who needs to go to work in order to, pay your bills, then we have to be united. And that our common enemy is, as you said, the agglomeration of the billions upon billions of dollars, and that's all the actual billionaire class, not working class people who are at the upper end.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will be in touch. We will definitely be in touch, and we will stay in touch. And I hope that Veterans for Peace can stay in touch. I want to comment on your beautiful dog that I saw, because they are also part of it.
Yes.
They're not separate. They are part of our family also, the animals. So we can't forget about them.
No,
All right,
absolutely not.
Susan, you
Yes,
want
and
to?
Kshama, I would also like to say thank you so much for joining us. It is wonderful to see a powerful, brilliant woman come to visit Veterans for Peace, and to hear you so articulately expressing those values and those political issues that we really need to support these days. So thank you so much for coming today. And yes, we would like for you to come back and talk with more people. This is wonderful. Thank you. And also thank you so much for noticing the video at the beginning of the meeting. We think that that is important to remind people that we are fighting for all living things on this earth, because what we are dealing with is those who would destroy everything for their own power and their own greed and their own money. And that's kind of our responsibility. We come together every month to talk about how we see we can impact change. And I have to admit, I remain an optimist. I really do believe that there is an opportunity, and there's always an opportunity, as long as we work together and we struggle together and we continue to move together through this process. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Susan. I absolutely agree. I share your optimism, and that is what fuels us every day to continue the fight.
This is terrific. And if you all would like to stay on, because I am about to ask if we have any news on flotillas that may be going out soon, or on additional information that we have. Sherry, I think you're still on. We greeted about 9 members of the flotilla who came back through New York last week. It was extraordinary to be able to go to the airport and have so many people there to greet them. And I do see that movement and their action as a victory for being optimistic about what is going on today.
Susan, I just got a doorbell ringing. I'll be right back.
I thought okay, sorry, folks. But again, it was extraordinary to welcome folks back to New York. It was a tough month and a half long journey that they took, and we'll continue to follow what's going on.